So in this lesson, I want to talk to you about importing your media assets into ProPresenter. Now, there are a few options that you'll need to decide on as you're bringing these items in, and I'll talk about that in this lesson, or I'll talk about those in this lesson. So to begin with, let's talk about importing directly into the video image bin, which is basically a storage area for pictures, video clips like MP4s, graphics that you can create in Photoshop or Illustrator, something like that. And I'll talk about why you'd want to import them into here as we progress through the lesson. But before we import anything, it's important to remember, and I cover this in preferences, and I'll briefly talk about this. If you go up to your preferences, click on that. I prefer in the Advanced tab that the background information always comes in with scale to fit selected. There's three options there. Same with foreground. And I talk about that in preferences. That's just how I feel. You can change it if you want and experiment with these others, but I do recommend scale to fit for both of these before you import anything. So I'll close that out. Now let's import directly into the video image bin area. If your window here, if you don't see it, make sure you click on this button up here in the toolbar, then you will see it. The next thing I want to teach you how to do is create a category so that you can import into a specific playlist, which I've created these options here by clicking on this down plus arrow, and I selected new playlist, then I gave it a name because I want to import video clips into my video image bin, and I'll click on this first to bring video in. Now I'll navigate up to the word file here, mouse click on that and select import video/image. And of course, I want to navigate to where those video files are. In my case, they're right in this folder. I'll click on the first item, then I'll shift click on the last so they're all selected, then I'll select open. Now, while those are being imported, the reason why you would import items down into here, there are a couple options that you have in ProPresenter, but the reason why you would import imagery, whether it's photos, video clips, or graphics, into the video image bin is because then they become available to any document. There's another method that I talk about in a different lesson where you can import directly into a slide. So for instance, if I go over here and I click on Captivate, I could import directly into any one of these slides for various reasons. And they're all really good, actually. I talk about that in Editing Slides Part 2. Lots of good stuff in that lesson. I recommend you watch that. Well, let's go back over to the empty document and let's import some pictures. So I've already created this playlist, so I'll click on it and I'll import some pictures. If I navigate up to the word file, import video image, then I'll go over to where my pictures are. And it's the same process basically to bring these in. Now, as I'm bringing these items in, there are different ways to do importing, which would happen up here in the container area in a blank slide. And the reason why I bring that up is because if I click on this photo after I bring it in, I'll always have black bars around the edge of this photo. Because the way the picture was originally taken with an expensive camera, by the way, it doesn't quite fit the entire region of my preview window. And that's because of when I import it in this way, ProPresenter just gives the area around it a solid black color. So even if I play a background underneath it, I would not see it. I would only see the black area, especially on a portrait style photo. That's important to remember. But this is a quick way to import photos or video clips directly into the video image bin. So I'll talk more about how to get a little bit of a different result by importing into a slide up here. I'll talk about it real quick. Okay, so let's import some graphics now. So I'll click on the graphics playlist. Let's clear our preview window. I'll navigate up to the word file, import, and it's the same process for all three of these different types of media. So I'll go over to my graphics and let's see, graphics there. Let's go with the Saddleback logo and maybe this Twitter follow .png, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And that's a JPEG for that one there. So I'll select open, and then those items come in. And when I click on that, of course, it looks pretty good. But again, I have this black information around it, and it's a little too large. So that's one of many ways to import into ProPresenter. That's a pretty quick way. I want to clear that out. Up here, it's a little different. I'll quickly talk about that. Meaning up here, I have a new document. It's empty. I want to bring in some graphics. So if I control click and select edit slide, I talk about this a lot more in Editing Slides Part 2. But anyway, I'll quickly go into this. I now have an empty container that represents this slide. I can then click on this item here to import, let's say, a photo. I'll go back over to my pictures and let's see, I'll bring in that first photo. I'll even bring in a portrait photo. So I'll bring that in for that slide. That's one option there. I'll drag that over. I'll import into the same slide real quick a portrait photo. and I'll drag that over, and I won't resize them for now. Again, I talk about that in editing slides part 2, but I think you can get it. If I mouse click on the corner, I can drag and slide and increase or decrease the size. But basically, if I exit this and I click on it, you won't see anything, of course, but if I clear that and navigate over here to a background, which I happen to already have where I've imported these, and I click on a background, then I click on this, now I see a difference between importing into a slide or importing into a playlist, right? If I clear this really quick and I click on that same portrait photo, but I go back up to my backgrounds and I click on that same background, it basically covers it. And if you're thinking, well, let's click on the background first, then go to pictures and click on that photo, it doesn't matter. It's just how you import that makes the difference. It's important to understand the difference between what I just did. In fact, what I just did for the graphics, so again, if I clear this out and I click on one of these graphics like this Twitter here, look, it doesn't really, in fact, it's too big and it doesn't quite work. Well, if I go back into my slide editor, control click, edit slide, I'm going to quickly do this, and I'll add another slide by clicking on the plus here. I'll get rid of this text box by clicking on it and pushing delete. There we go. And I import that same Twitter graphic, right? I'll go back there real quick, go back to my graphics, I'll go back to that item there, I'll bring that in. Now I can resize it, right? Okay, that part I think is pretty obvious, so I can scale it down, maybe drag it over here to the left. Let's clear our preview window and let's exit the slide editor. And then I can also go back to the backgrounds real quick, click on that same background, then I can click on this, and look, it just works a little bit better if you import directly into a slide. So that's briefly how you import your media assets into ProPresenter so that you can work with them in a couple of different ways.